In progress.
All right, we are up to Daf Nun Aleph. Where are we? We're up to Daf Nun Aleph, Esvei, 3 lines into the page. We had a concept in the Mishnah, a machlokes Rav and Shmuel. If an animal falls and hurts or dies in a pit, what is the chiyuv based on? Is the chiyuv based on the fact that you made a pit, it hit the ground, and you're paying for the contact of the ground? Or are you paying because every time you dig a pit, it creates foul odor, which is dangerous, and that's really what you're paying for? So we said yesterday, we said a maisa with Rav Nachman, that there was an ox that fell into a 6 tefach deep ditch. Rav Nachman felt it's a treifa, because it could have gotten a blow that would cause it to die. They shafted it before they checked its welfare. So the Gemara is assuming that you see from this that Rav Nachman holds that you could die on a pit less than 10 tefachim. Meaning, and the reason why less than 10 tefachim, the Mishnah says if the animal dies, you're potter, is because he really follows Rav, that you're not chayiv for the contact, you're chayiv for the foul air, and less than 10 tefachim, while it could cause a death based on contact, the foul air, it does not. So I have a kasha, according to Rav Nachman, that you could die based on a pit less than 10 tefachim. Bayis haskila hayigvayishte kaimis. You know, skila, before they would stone you, they would push you off a building. How tall was this building? It was 2 times the height of men, which is 6 amas. It was about 15 feet. V'tani Allah v'kaimish le'ri kan shalosh. The Gemara has a question. They would throw you off a building that was 15 feet high. But if you could die less than 10 tvachim, why do you need such a high building? So the Gemara responds, wait, according to you, that you want to pick a height that could kill somebody. Everyone agrees 10 tvachim could kill somebody, so definitely it doesn't have to be 15 feet, it could be 10 tvachim. So what's the answer? You don't want to knock him off a building and then he just breaks a leg, then you take him again, knock him off again. You want to, he should die in a respectful way, so you want to give him a death that you want it to be swift. So the reason why it's that high is not because you can't die at a lower height. It's because that's the appropriate height to kill someone where it's less painful. So the Gemara says, if the purpose is just to kill him quickly, then drop him off a building 200 feet. The answer is Mishum Devenavel, because then the body will begin to break apart, and that's not respectful for the body. Okay. Ace, we have another kasha. You're basically saying that, according to Rav Nachman, you could die in a pit less than 10 tvachim. I'll tell you outside the kasha, then we'll see it inside. The halacha is that there's a concept called a maika, which means that a building, a roof of a building, you have to build a fence. Now, how tall does the building have to be fenced to make a fence? 10 tvachim. Oh, you see, you can only die at a height of 10 tvachim. Less than 10 tvachim, you can't. It's a kasha and Rav Nachman. Let's see this. Keep all nifel mimenu. The pasuk says that you put a fence because someone might fall off the roof. Mimenu v'lo b'toichin. Now, first of all, you only have to have a fence if the concern is falling off the roof, not falling onto the roof. Let's say the building is below the street, meaning the street is surface level, and they dug a ditch and built a house in the ditch. So the concern is not falling off the house; the concern is falling onto the roof. You don't have to build a fence. Okay. How tall does the house have to be for you to make a fence? It has to be 10 tvachim. Oh, if Rav Nachman's right, that you could take a die on a ditch less than 10 tvachim. And then why does the house have to be 10 tvachim to require a maika? You should have a maika even on less than 10 tvachim. So the answer is, the reason why you need a maika on 10 tvachim is not because you can't die on less than 10 tvachim. It's because the maika is only on a house. For a roof. And the definition of a roof on a house is 10 tvachim. If it's not 10 tvachim, it's not called a bayis. Shani bayis, the chopachas mi'asar la bayisu. So it's not that, really, you could die in less than 10 tvachim, but it's not a bayis on less than 10 tvachim. Wait a minute, ihachi. Oh, so you're telling me that the reason why it's 10, right, Pashas, why does it have to be 10? Because that's where people could die. You're saying, no, you could die in less than 10. It has to be 10, though, because that's considered a house. But what's the definition of house? The inside. 10 tvachim is not 10 tvachim of inhabitable area. If you're telling me the definition of a house is 10 tvachim, shouldn't it be the 10 tvachim inside? This is 10 tvachim on the outside, including the roof. So it's 9 tvachim. So it's still not 10 tvachim anyway. Right? You're telling me the 10 tvachim is because that's considered a bias. That's 10 tvachim of inhabitable area. But if that means that the inside should be 10 tvachim, the inside walls should be 10 tvachim, not the outside. The outside is more than 10. If the outside is 10, that means the inside is not 10. The Gemara says, if you remove the roof, it's not 10 tvachim of inside space. The airspace of the inside house should be 10 tvachim. If you're telling me, if it's about falling, so then 10 tvachim is all you need from the outside. You're saying, no, it's not about falling, because really you could die less than 10 tvachim. It's that the definition of a bias is 10 tvachim of livable area. So then the inside of the house should be 10 tvachim. So the answer is, you're right. The outside is 10 tvachim, and the inside is tvachim. How? Because they dug a tefach into the ground. Wait a minute. So if that's the case, then why does the walls have to be 10 tvachim at all? The walls can be 2 tvachim, and you dig 8 tvachim into the ground. You have a 10 tefach house. The point is, if the definition is mitzad a house, and the cases where outside is 10, but you dug inside to make it 1, then why does the outside have to be 10? The outside could be 5, and you dig 5 into the ground. So what's going on? So the Gemara says, reject what we said before. We said that Rav Nachman held this animal as a treifa because the animal could die in less than 10 tvachim. The answer is not true. The fall has to be 10 tvachim. So wait, it was a ditch that was 6. The answer is, if you picture an ox or a cow in your head, their legs are very tall. Their stomach and their heart, their vital organs, are not touching the ground. They're 4 tvachim off the ground at least. So a 6 tefach ditch plus the height of the stomach, the animal was 10 tvachim above the ground when it fell. So the reason why you're chayiv, normally you need 10 tvachim to kill, but for this animal it's taka 10 tvachim. The Gemara says, how much space is there from the chest of the ox to the ground? At least 4 tvachim. How deep was the ditch? 6 tvachim. 6 tvachim plus the 4 tvachim of airspace. That's why you're chayiv. Wait a minute. So why does the Mishnah say that the minimum ditch in order to kill an animal is 10? It's not really 10. It's 6 because the animal is 4 tvachim off the ground. The answer is you're right. They're talking about a case. The case of the Mishnah is where the ox is not standing and it falls in. Okay. But you're right, meaning had the animal been standing and fell in, it would be chayiv for Misa, even on 6 tvachim. The Mishnah that says you need 10 is because the Mishnah is referring to a case where the animal rolled in, so it didn't fall. It wasn't standing upright. Okay. New Mishnah. Bar shel shnei shutfim. You have a pit that belongs to 2 people. Avar lava rishon v'lekiseyu. They both, let's say, the Gemara is going to explain the cases where me and Reuven and Shimon own a pit. Reuven, it's a pit full of water. So Reuven is taking water out, and then Shimon comes. So Reuven's not going to cover it because Shimon's there. So he lets Shimon, and then he leaves. The halacha is, the second one is chayiv. Why? Because Reuven was basically, Reuven's responsibility is to make sure the pit is covered. But because Shimon is using it, he's going to let Shimon use it, and then he left. So because Shimon was using it after him, it's Shimon's responsibility and not Reuven's. Omri, the Gemara is a kasha. How do you have a bar that belongs to 2 people? If you remember yesterday's daf, we had a machlokes tanoim whether a bar b'shus hayachid is chayiv. Now, if a bar b'shus hayachid is chayiv, then you could easily have a bar of 2 shutvim because it's a bar that's the backyard is owned by 2 people and they dug a pit together. But if a bar b'shus harabim is only 1 chayiv, how do you have a bar of 2 shutvim? No one owns b'shus harabim. So how do you have the case? Omri. So what's the case where you could have 2 people own a pit? Now, if you hold the Rav Akiva, then the case is where it's a backyard that belongs to both of them. So they both dug in a backyard that belongs to both of them. Therefore, it's a bar shel shusvim. They have kiru barn, and they're mafka the area around it. And if you hold that a bar b'shus harabim is the only one that's chayiv, how do you find a bar b'shus harabim belong to 2 people? B'shus harabim doesn't belong to anybody. It's the responsibility is whoever dug it. So maybe Reuven and Shimon both appoint a shliach to dig, and he does it for both of them. The problem is, ein shliach d'var aveira. Then the shliach is chayiv, not them, because ein shliach d'var aveira. There's no such thing as shlichus to do a sin. Here's the case. Reuven dug 5 and Shimon dug 5. So Reuven did the first 5, and Shimon did 6 to 10. The problem is the Stalak Ma'aseh Rishon. If Reuven digs the first 5 inches and then Shimon does 6 to 10, and then someone falls in and dies, it's Shimon's responsibility because the first one didn't do anything wrong. He didn't dig a pit that was deep enough. If one person started, the other one finished, the responsibility is on the finisher. Now there is a machlokes tanoim, as we'll see in a moment, between Rabbi and the Rabbanon, whether according to the Rabbanon, if 2 people dig a pit, the second one is the only one responsible. So you can't have a case of 2 shutvim. Rabbi feels that for nezek, if let's say I dig 3 and someone else digs 3 and then someone falls in, we're both responsible for damages. But if I dig 5 and someone else digs 5 and then someone falls in and dies, it's the second one's responsibility. So even Rabbi, you cannot have 2 people be a shutvim by a case of death. You could have 2 people be shutvim in a case of damages. So the only thing we've explained is how you could have a case of shutvim is according to Rabbi, and there's only damages. You could have a case where one person started the digging, the second person finished it. But you don't explain a case, you have not found a case of death according to Rabbi, and you have not found a case at all according to Rabbanan in either way, both nezek or damages. So what's the case? The answer is the case is where one person digs it the first 9 tvachim, but the chiyuv is only when they get to 10. They both, with their same hands, dig out the last tefach together. So they both grab a piece of dirt together, making it 10, and it's mamish at the same time. That's why they're both responsible. We referenced before in Machlekes Rebbe and the Rabbanon that according to the Rabbanon, if 2 people dug a ditch, outside of that case specifically, but in general, I do 5, they do 5, then he does 5. The second one is the only one responsible. Rebbe says, I agree with that for death, not for nezek. What is this Machlekes? My Rebbe Rabbanon, Titania. One person digs a pit of 9 tefachim, and the second one digs the 10th tefach, making it a full pit for death. The second one is responsible, not the first. Rabbi says they're both responsible if someone gets hurt, because the first one did a pit that could cause pain, and the second one added to a pit that can cause pain. But when it comes to death, it's the only one that's the second one that's responsible, not the first. My time of the Rabbanon, why did the Rabbanon hold that it's always the second one? Where the pasuk says if you dig a pit or uncover a pit, and the question we had yesterday, if you're chayiv for digging a pit, of course you're chayiv for uncovering a pit. Why do you need both? Now yesterday we had a tzricha from Rabbi Akiva, that each one is to teach you basically that I need both to tell you that in both cases I'm responsible, and both cases covering suffices. But the Rabbanan have a different pshat. The case is digging and uncovering, meaning one person dug and one person uncovered, the second one is responsible. So you see, according to the Rabbanan, if two people participate in making a pit, the second one is responsible, not the first. For Rabbi who holds that the second, both are responsible for damages. Amar, what does he say? He explains the pasuk as we explained yesterday, and not for this. For Rabbanon, the Rabbanon, why don't they explain it like yesterday, like we had yesterday from Rabbi Akiva, rendering the pasuk no longer being available to teach you that the second one is responsible? You're right. This is the Rabbanon's source that the second one is responsible. The pasuk says ish, singular, only one person can be responsible for a pit and not 2. And we assume it's the second one. Now the Gemara is going to ask in a moment. That just tells you that one person is responsible. How do you know it's the second one? Maybe it's the first. We'll get to it in a second. For Rabbi, who holds that they're both responsible, what does he do? The pasuk, he says the pasuk is telling you not that 1 as opposed to 2, but that a person is responsible for digging a pit and not an animal. Meaning, if an animal digs a pit and someone falls in, you cannot get the owner of the animal is not responsible. For Rabbanon, Trey Ishbar Ksivi, the Rabbanon says the word Ishbar is found twice. One is to tell you not an animal, one is to tell you not 2 people. For Rabbi, I did kasava. The Rabbi says only one is them for a drush and one of them is for a context. Okay, now according to the Rabbanon, Ish Echad v'loishnaim, meaning that if 2 people dig, only one is responsible. How do you know it's the second one? Maybe it's the first one's responsibility. He started it. The pasuk says that it's the carcass of an animal belongs to the one whose pit is fell in. It's the one who caused the death. Meaning the pasuk is clearly addressing the one who made the pit, who finalized the pit. Wait a minute. I thought we used that pasuk for something else. Let's say you have an animal that you set aside as a carbon, but then it became blemished, so you redeemed it. You bring it home. So you could use it Now there are restrictions. You can't sell its meat in the streets. You can't. There are certain restrictions that you have to the carcass of the animal. What if that animal were to fall into a pit and die? The halacha is the owner of the pit is not responsible. Why? Hamesi aloi, because the pasuk says the owner of the pit gets to keep the carcass. That implies that it's only the type of animal that falls in that you're responsible for is the type of animal that you could use the carcass for anything that you want. No restrictions. But an animal that was set aside for a karban and was redeemed, there are limitations of what you could do to the carcass. There are limitations of because it still has holiness. Therefore, Hamesi aloi excludes that case. So that's how he uses the Hamesi aloi. Omri, the Rabbana respond, because the Rabbana use Hamesi aloi to tell you that it belongs to the second one. He says, no, it's coming to tell you that the animal, it's to exclude Psulim Mikdashim. The Rabbana's response is, Valam Memela Shamina the Behida of Misa Skinon. The answer is you can learn that both from out. What's the point of the drasha? The point of the drasha is that the animal generally belongs to the person whose pit it fell in, one who caused the death. But Psulim Mikdashim, not. What do you see? Pasuk is Vayter still addressing the only one whose pit caused the death. It's clearly talking to the second person, not the first guy. Okay. Tan Rabbanon, Echad HaChayfer Bar Asara. Now we had a machlokes before Rabbi and the Rabbanon. If one person made 9 and one person made it into 10, according to the Rabbanon, it's the second one that's chayiv exclusively. According to Rabbi, they're both chayiv for nezek. Tan Rabbanon, Echad HaChayfer Bar Asara. One person dug a 10 tafach ditch, uba'achar v'shlim l'esrim, and then some person made it into 20, uba'achar v'shlim l'shloishim, and then a third person made it into 30. Kulon chayav, they're all chayiv. Oh, that's not like the Rabbanon, because the Rabbanon said only the second one. Over here, they're all chayiv. Or many, I have a contradiction. The Brisa says that if I dig a pit that's 10 tvachim and another person plasters the inside, making it more smoky and full of smog, the second one is chayiv, not the first. So that sounds like the Rabbanon. So the question is basically that first Brisa. Let's go to the next page. The first Brisa that says that Ruvain made it 10, Shimon deepened it to 20, and then Levi deepened it to 30. They're all chayiv. It's not like the Rabbanon. So the Gemara says no. Lema ha Rebbe ha Rabbanon. Am Rav Zvid ha Rabbanon. Really, it could follow the Rabbanon. The Rabbanon hold the last one's chayiv only. Kan like kami Rabbanon achron chayiv lehechet loy ka'avid misa shir kama shir misa lehechet kama shir misa afilu Rabbanon ma'id dekulin chayav. The answer is even the Rabbanon could offer that brisa. What did the Rabbanon say? The Rabbanon said only the last one's chayiv. What was the case of the Rabbanon? The case of the Rabbanon was the first one did 9 tvachim. The second one made it into 10, made it a viable bar that's able to kill. The halach is the last one's chayiv. But that's only true because the first one only did 9. He never did a full bar in halacha. But had the first one done 10, so he did a full bar, and then the second one did into 20, and then the third one did into 30. What's that? Okay. So the first one, it's on that table. The first one did into 10. The second one did into 20, and the third one did into 30. So because it's right there. Yeah, it's right there in front of you. Yeah. Oh, I don't know.
He was Hebrew English translation.
I'm sorry. The first one did. Sorry, guys. So the point is, the first one did he dug a full pit, 10 tvachim deep. And then the second one did to 20, the third one did to 30. So each one did a full bar. Kedei lahamis, a full bar. So because each one did a full bar, they're all chayiv. The case of the Rabbanon feel the second one's chayiv is because the first one only did 9. He didn't do a full bar. But had the first one did 10, a full bar, as long as the first one did a full bar, he's chayiv. The second one did a full bar, he's also chayiv. Third one did a full bar, he's also chayiv. They're all three are going to be chayiv. So the Gemara is Akasha. So you're telling me that it was authored by the Rabbanon. They're all chayiv because the first one did kedei lahamis, and the second one did kedei lahamis, they're all chayiv. But if the first one only did 9, the second one did 10, then only the second one's chayiv. Wait a minute. Hasayid v'kaid. The next case of the brisa. The next brisa is where a person did a full 10. Then the second one plastered it. The second one's chayiv. But the first one did a full 10. He should be chayiv also. To cover kamashir misa gedani achron chayiv. Amri hasam shlehay by hevel misa. The case over there, that Mishnah is following the shita that the ikar concern is the smog of the foul odor, and the case over there is although he did a full 10, that one happened to be so spacious that there was no foul odor. So the second one came and plastered it. He's the one who did the hevel, made the kedei lahamis. You guys gracious. So the Gemara says, Sorry, don't mind. There's a wild dog running around the house. So the Gemara says, Ikad Amri, some have a different version. Amar is Vid Hava Haba Rebbe. Really, they're both authored by Rebbe. Rebbe holds they both could be chayiv. So here's the problem. So why is it that if the first one did a full 10 and then the second one did plaster, only the second one's chayiv? Rebbe sheet is they're both chayiv. So the Gemara says, Hach diktani kulan chayav and shaper. The case is where the first one dug 10, but there was no foul odor, not enough to kill, not enough to damage at all. So Imamish did nothing. The second one by plastering, he did everything. That's why he's chayiv. Meaning in general, if you have two people, Rebbe would hold they're both chayiv for nezek. But over here, the first one Mamish did nothing, although he did a 10 tefach deep ditch. Mamish, no foul odor whatsoever. Okay, Amirava, Haniach Evan al Piabar Vishlim Lasara. Let's say you have a 9 tefach deep ditch, and one person, instead of digging another tefach, he puts a row of stones on the outside. Now it's full 10. It's the same machlokes Rabbi Rabban. According to Rabbi, they're both chayiv. According to Rabban, the second one's chayiv. What's the chiddush? So we said a machlokes if the second guy digs a tefach deep into the dirt. Over here, instead of digging, he added a row on top of one tefach. What's the difference? Pshit, it's pashut. Ma'od the same lamatu the havli didei katatule. Avlamayla doi havli didei katatule makloi kamash malon. The chiddush over there is in the case where one person digs 9 and the second person digs a 10th. The second person added to the foul odor by digging a 10th. He actually changed the structure of the pit itself. But over here, where the person didn't touch the pit, he just added a row of rocks. So it's technically now a 10 tefach deep ditch. But he didn't add any foul odor. At least you'd think he wasn't. Maybe it's butter. Kamashal, no. The second one is chayiv. By Rava, I have a question. Tam tefach. Let's say you have this case where, according to the Rabbanan, right, Reuven digs 9, and then Shimon puts a layer of dirt. Okay. Or a simple case. One person digs 9, the second one digs a 10th. So according to Rabbanan, the second one's chayiv. What if he then, now he's responsible, what if instead of covering the ditch, he just puts the tefach of dirt back? He just undoes what he did. Is he yoytz zayin? Do we say, he made the 10th, he removed the 10th, he's fine? Or no, the second he made the 10th, it's now mamish his ditch, bichlal, and he has to fill it up entirely. That's the question. Besilik avon of mahu. Mi amrin amayda avid shakel, I dilman estalka, my serishan, become a kula b'shusei. Teiku, it's a shayla. Yeah. Amar Rabbi Chanam, Rabbi Shmuel bar Marta, another halacha, bar Shmani. Let's say one person digs an 8 tefach deep ditch. Umehen shnei tvachim, but 2 of the 8 are filled with water. And then the animal falls in and dies, chayiv. He's chayiv. It's only 8. The answer is 8, but if 2 tefachim of the 8 are filled with water, that water has a foul stench that it's ki'ilu was 10. And you're chayiv. My timer? Called tefach the maya ketredi abasha. Every tefach of water is equal to 2 tefachim of dry land. So 2 tefachim of dirt is the equivalent of 4 tefachim. 2 tefachim of water is the equivalent of 4 tefachim of dirt, and it's mamish like it was a 10 tefach deep ditch. So Gemara's a kasha. The Gemara's kasha like this. Ibailuhu. Here's the question: 2 out of 8 is water that we have. What if it's a different ratio? Bar tisha mehen tefach and mayim. What if it's 9 and 1? Mahu, what's the halacha? Do we say that only 1 tefach of water is really not going to do a lot of foul stench? Or perhaps it's deeper, that all the more so it's going to be a problem. Another question. What if it's a 7 tefach deep ditch and 3 tefachim of water? Do we say, well, the ratio works, you have enough water? Or do you say, no, the water thing only works if it's at least 8 tefachim of whole? This is 7. We're not sure. Let's finish up the daf. What if one person digs a ditch and the other person just widens it? He doesn't actually keep it there, he just widens it. What's the halacha? So the Gemara says, well, the second one isn't widening it, making it less stenchy. It makes it better. The Gemara says, no, Adrahava, Kira Vezeka. No, you make a ditch wider, more people can fall in. It made it more dangerous. So, here's the answer. We check the animal that fell in. This Gemara explains, at least according to Taisvis, this follows the Shita, Rajba, This follows the shita of Shmuel, that you're chayiv either for the animal hitting the ground or the stench. So basically over here, by me widening it, I made it more possible for animals to fall in, but I made the stench less problematic. So I have to figure out if the animal died. Did he die from the stench, in which case I'm not responsible, or from the falling in? So you got to check how his head was. If his head went first, so it was from the stench, then I'm chayiv. Then I'm pata. I didn't do the stench. If it fell in, but it fell backwards, so it broke its back, then it's the impact, then I'm chayiv. Some have a different version. We'll check. Let's say the original pit was like a circle, and then you made it bigger. Let's say you made it bigger on the north side. So see which side did the guy fall in. If the animal fell in an area of the pit that it was a pit before you widened it, he would have fell in without your participation. Then you didn't do anything. If it fell in on the side that you widened it, then it's chayiv. Okay, itmar. Basically, here's the rule. A pit. The question is, what if you have a full square? So its width and its height are equal. It's 10 by 10. The basic rule is like this. If it's wider than it's deep, it's 15 by 10. It's so wide, then there's no air problem. Not going to be an issue. If it's thin, if it's wider than it's deep is fine. Deeper than it's wide is for sure an issue. The question is, 10 by 10 is square. What's the halacha? Barsham Krach Barab Mishid Rabbi Chana, Damashid Ravami, Chad Amr Loilam Yesh Behevel, Achi Berachba Yasar Lumka, the Chad Amr Loilam Ein Behevel, Achi Umka Yasar Rachba, seems to be a machlekes. Okay. The Gemara continues. Ava Arishon Veloki Seyu. Barishon Me'emasai Potter. We said in the case of the Mishnah, you have Reuven and Shimon, they're both partners. Reuven is filling up his water, and then Shimon comes, and he leaves Shimon. So it's Shimon's responsibility. The question is, what does he have to do to basically make sure that it's Shimon's responsibility? Does he have to verbalize, you're in charge? Does he have to hand him the cover of the pit to say, you? That's the question. So the Gemara says, when is the first one responsible? One opinion says, you could just leave as long as he's filling up the water, you're fine. You don't have to tell him anything. Leave, it's fine. He's taking over. That's it. It's understood. The other opinion says, no, you have to actually hand in the pit cover, because that's basically verbalizing you are in charge. Kitanoi, it's really a machlokes tanoim. Hamadala ma'im and abar. If one person is taking water from the well, and the other person comes and says, leave me here and I'll take the water. The second you leave him, it's fine. You have to hand him the cover. You have to actually say you're in charge by handing him the cover. What's the machlokes? They're both partners. It has to do with yesh breira. If you believe in breira, here's the deal. So if you believe in breira, that means that when Reuven takes water, he's just taking his water. Retroactively, it's mivarer that he's not taking his friends, he's just taking his, and Shimon is just taking his. If you believe in that, Rav Elazar said yesh breira. If you believe in breira, that means, you see, here's the deal. If I'm taking from the water and I'm taking from both of our portions, right? Reuven and Shimon own this well. And if you don't believe in breira, that means that every drop of water that I'm taking is partially mine, partially yours. There's no way to know. So I'm taking the water, Reuven's taking the water, then Shimon comes. By you letting Shimon take over, you're basically telling Shimon you're in charge of yours and mine. But if you believe in breira, that means that Reuven is taking his, Shimon is taking his, and they're sort of separate. Therefore, in order for you to tell Shimon you're responsible for my chelik, you have to verbalize by handing him the cover. Rabbanan savri ein breira. There's no breira, and therefore Reuven and Shimon, there's no everything. We're all sharing each other. Therefore, I'm taking from your and from mine. You're taking from you and from me. And therefore, by me, you taking over. You're taking over my chelik. Naturally, you're taking over my chelik, because there's no separation. This Rav Elazar ben Yaakov shita that you say breira is l'shitasa d'tanan hashutfim shenadru hazemizeh. Let's say you have partners me and Reuven and Shimon share a backyard, and we asked each other from benefit from each other. So the question is, can I go into my backyard and can he go into his backyard? If you believe in breira, that means that every step I'm taking is really my backyard and not his. If you don't believe in Breira, that means that I'm sharing every step. I'm benefiting from him. That's the same machlokes. Rav Elazar ben Yaakov you could enter because of Breira. Rav Elazar ben Yaakov Sava yesh Breira. Because of Breira, I'm going into my section. You're going into your section. Rabbanan Sabri ain't Breira. Okay, finish up the daf. Rav Elazar, if I'm selling a pit to my friend, as long as you hand them over the cover, it's acquired. So the question is like this: what type of kinyan is that? There's kinyan kasef, there's kinyan chazaka. How is handing over the cover anything? The Gemara says, "Hechidami ibik sefer." If you're buying with money, liknei bekisva, you need money. Ibik chazaka. If you're buying with chazaka, liknei bechazaka, you need chazaka. Chazaka means to do something actively as the owner. You have to put the cover down, or you have to put up a fence, something. The answer is loyal chazaka. Really, the case is chazaka, and the rule is that if you want a kainu chazaka, the owner has to say, perform a kinyan chazaka. You have to verbalize. You have to chazak v'kaneh. You have to tell him, do this chazaka. But now we're saying that as long as you're handed over the cover, so you're not kainah with the cover, but once you get the cover, you now have permission to do the kinyan chazaka without being verbally told to do so. I'll stop here.